Right, let's have a look at question types. The things to think about are, I guess, as you're coming into it, aren't all questions pretty much the same? Is there a limit to how many open questions you should ask and how many closed questions you should ask? I mean, is there a particular mix you should have, or is it pretty much open slather? Well, the first thing you'll have to do when you're constructing your question, you know what kind of information you want. Are you going to ask an open question or a closed question? An open question is a question for which there's no predetermined answer. So you ask the question and you get what you get. A closed question is a question for which there is a predetermined answer or a predetermined number of answers, range of answers. So a closed question is one where you can say, choose from among the following, and you might just say 4 or 5 things, and they can choose from those 4 or 5 things, and that's all there is. There is no other. An open question, on the other hand, is a question that allows the respondent to answer in their own way. So the uses of open questions are when the researcher doesn't quite know how the respondent's going to answer. And I guess when it ensures the answers are not unduly influenced by expected answers. Some of the problems with putting up suggested answers is that then directs people to that range of answers, and it may not occur to them that there's something else. So that can be a problem. Another advantage of open question is that you can monitor trends over time. You ask people questions and they might answer it differently as time changes because they're different concerns or something like that. So you can ask a question in say a longitudinal survey over maybe 10 years and see how the answers change. The other thing you can do with an open question is it can be a follow-up to a previous question. For example, you might ask a question and somebody gives an answer. So, okay, could you explain that, please? That's a question. It's an open question. It's a perfectly valid survey question. So that allows somebody to expand on what they said or explain what they said. Open questions do take less time to construct, but more time to analyse. They take more time to analyse because obviously you're going to get a lot more different answers. Now, assume you ask an open question and you get all this information. It's kind of like, well, what are you going to do with this information because it's all different? Well, you could use content analysis to try and do that, or you could use some other variety of thematic analysis through the thing to get, say, different answer characteristics. For example, how many of them were multifaceted responses versus how many of them were simple responses. Either way, you probably should develop a coding scheme to do your analysis, just as you would for case study research or any other variety of qualitative research. To group the questions according to characteristics or themes, characterize the subgroups. It's ideal to finish with one group code for each answer or each answer, and apply the coding scheme to future answers or unanalyzed questions. These are the things you can do there. Closed questions. The disadvantages first, you get the ballot effect, which is that any answer will attract some votes, no matter how inappropriate. In any election, any candidate will get some votes. The position effect was just too hard to think of what the answer is. So, pick either the first one, the last one, or the one in the middle, or put them down in the donkey vote, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. So responses are chosen depending on their position in the list. Now, there's obviously, with market surveys, there's a great deal of interest in this and been a great deal of study done on it. And we found with something like 12 possible answers, the first third will gather, the first third and the last third receive more responses. The third in the middle is not evenly represented. So there are effects of the questions themselves. The answer criteria for closed questions. For closed questions, the answers should be mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Okay? Now we see this sometimes, and there's an example there. What size is your organization? 5 or less employees? 6 to 12 employees? 13 to 32? 33 to 1,000? More than 1,000? Now that covers everything. More than 1,000, if it's several million, well, it's several million, it's more than 1,000. There isn't the commonly found problem where you'd say less than 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15. All right, so you've got this overlap. Now, how does a person answer? Do they answer in the less than 10 or 10 to 15 or 15 to 20? And that crops up more frequently than you might think. Another example is if you're asking about vehicle types, what type of vehicle do you own? Now, if you list out sedan, four-wheel drive, people mover, station wagon, sports car, utility, what's missing? What happens if they don't own any? What happens if they own a motorbike? What happens if they drive a truck, a utility? It's not in the list. So there should be an other category there. It's quite frequent to combine the two. Now, one of the nice things about having a collection of criteria as a closed question is they can suggest what kind of answer you're expecting, and that can clarify the answer quite well. So frequently you have closed followed by open. So example there is, do you use one of the following IDEs? I've forgotten what the I stands for, but development environments. So Visual Studio, Eclipse, Oracle IDE, Rational, Other. Please specify. Now, that suggests what it is you're looking for, and people can recognize those and say, oh, is that what you mean by an IDE? Oh, well, I don't use that. I use this other one, like Red Hat or something. And then you can follow that up by, why do you use that particular IDE in preference to the others? That's a good question. So closed-open combination can be used to suggest possible answers rather than an exhaustive list, and it's useful during interview surveys. It's very useful because a lot of the time with so many things, you'll find that although the actual list of possibilities is quite large, the top 4 or 5 is probably going to cover most of the field, and from then on it's very infrequent. Now, having decided what type of question, whether it's closed or open, you now have to decide the specific wording of the question. And the words must be used with precise meanings. You have to be precise, they don't. The question must be meaningful to the intended audience, and it must evoke the precise meaning you intend. You've got to get the question across to them in a way that they can understand and that gets your meaning across to them. And if you have to practice this and try this and test this a few times, well, that's what you've got to do. The choice of words influences the answer, and there is an example there. How long was the movie? Well, the average answer was 130 minutes. But how short was the movie? The average answer was 100 minutes. That's the same movie. How come there's such a difference? Well, it's in the wording. How short? Well, we know a short movie is 90 minutes or something like that, so it's probably about 100 minutes. We know a long movie is 3 hours, 180 minutes, so it's probably going to be up that end of the scale. So possibly, in that case, you should have asked about movie duration, not how long or short it was. In general, use common sense. Now, who is the intended audience and what do they understand? Talk to them. It's a conversation. Talk to them. There are some traps though. Don't use double negatives. Among other things, it just confuses people, but there are some languages where a double negative is answered quite literally, and I know, personally I know that Japanese double negative is answered quite literally. So, are you not coming to the movie tonight? Yes. In English it doesn't make any sense. Is it yes you're coming or yes you're not coming? Well, in Japanese it's literally yes I'm not coming. The context of the question can affect the meaning of the word, and this you can use when you're constructing your surveys, and we'll do all that in a section on funneling questions. Now, written words are perceived differently from spoken words. I can't give you an example of that, but it's simply something to be aware of. One of the ones that comes up from time to time is an elliptical question. That's the term used for it. And you say, well, have you got any elliptical questions? And what do you mean? I don't know what an elliptical question is in the first place. Well, an elliptical question is one where it's not clear from what position the question should be answered. It's not clear how the person should answer the question. An example there is, do service-oriented architecture applications enable a company to respond to changing business conditions faster than non-SOA applications? Well, from whose perspective do you want this question answered? From the managing director, from the CIO, from the developer, from the customer? Whose opinion do you want? Now, unless it is clear from the question context, please avoid elliptical questions by making the position explicit. So, for example, in your opinion. So you're making it clear that you simply want their opinion. Or, as a developer, what do you think? The example is, as an experienced software application developer, do SO applications enable a company to respond to changing business conditions faster than non-SOA applications? I don't know why a developer would know that, but you make the position clear. Another example is, advertising leads to wasteful buying in our society. Well, from what perspective do you want that answered? It's a statement aside from anything else. You could have said, I think advertising leads to wasteful buying in our society. And answer that with a Likert scale. They can agree or not disagree. So an elliptical question is one where it's not really clear from what position you want or what perspective you want the question answered. So that covers the area of phrasing your questions. It's not always easy, and you probably have to go through it several times. Just like coding, you'll have to debug it and go over it and over it until you get it right. The more, if your research doesn't matter, then your reviewing doesn't matter. But if your research matters, you better do it.